Morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's your coach Jace here, and we are ready to rip into another episode of the Better Body Academy podcast. What is going on, guys? I hope you're having a beautiful, beautiful week so far. We are joining you here from a very, very wet Bali, and as I understand, it's going to be the same thing in Australia for the next couple of days as well, as you guys get absolutely smashed. To all our friends in the UK, we are slightly later than we normally are. This is because there's been a time change, so I do apologise. After the UK corrects itself, I believe after this weekend, we should be back on a similar time. So guys, let us know if you're coming in to watch this one live, and I am going to be kicking this starting in 90 seconds. This is going to be all about resistance training and the mistakes that people are making, and hopefully a very, very helpful episode for you guys. So if you're coming in this one live, guys, you know what to do. Either hashtag into the comments that you're here, let us know, or alternatively, we will hashtag replay and know that you've been here to get the juice. So guys, we're starting in 60 seconds. How's the week been, team? We're going to bring in our IG audience. Good morning, everyone. Look at this. How good. All the teams coming in. I hope you're having a beautiful start to the day, guys. Or the end if it is for you. A little bit of a weird background here, right? We're staying in this kind of like weird villa in Bali that's like, I should show you, but it's like decked out, like super freaking weird with like very cool artwork, and I'm sure the owner's pretty fancy. We're starting in 30 seconds, guys. So come on in, get amongst. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Big dog JC Nye, Shawnee's here. Look at all the boys coming in for the juice, all the girls coming in for the juice. I love it. We're going to rip into this one, team. So I'm just going to bring in our Instagram crew. So we are ready to rock and roll over there. And we are live on Instagram, and let's get this started, I reckon, team. Are we good to go? We're good to go? We're good to go? Good morning, Cara. Let's do this, team. All right, on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. Now, guys, we are just ticking in to April. Can you guys fucking believe it? We are already in April. How the time flies when you're having fun. To all of those that had, real grand ideas to do some damage in your transformation this year, well, we are already a quarter of the year done. So if you are listening to this podcast and you haven't started yet, reach out, shoot us a message. If you're struggling to get into momentum, please do so. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about resistance training first. This episode is the 10 mistakes that people are making inside a gym. The reason we are doing this episode is inside of Better Body Academy. If you haven't caught the note yet, this is form month. April is form month. What this means is that we are correcting your form in the gym over the course of April. We can only do this if you provide us footage or vision of you executing your sets in the gym. Now, I know what that feels like, right? It's a little bit daunting, particularly if you are intimidated by the whole gym environment anyway, right? Setting up a camera, sticking it against the wall can be a little bit of a daunting thing. I get it. But let me ask you a question. Do you want to get a return on investment in the work that you're putting into your workouts? And if the answer is yes, then I need you to start taking some footage, parking your ego, stop worrying about the judgment, and get some footage up. I especially want you to take footage of what are called compound exercises that you're doing in your program. Don't just take exercises as your bicep curls, right? Your bicep curls are great, really good exercise, but what we want to see is those big multi-joint movements. We want to have a look at those. Things like the squat, things like the deadlift, things like the overhead press, your bench press, your hip thrust. We want to see those movements so that we can make sure that we can just give you a little bit of technical guidance, so the next time you go in and do that movement, you can make a little bit of correction. So with that said, I want to get into the top 10 mistakes that I see that are ruining people's gym progress. Because if you've got to the point where you're putting yourself out there, you're gone from being scared of the gym, and now you're in there, you want to get the biggest bang on your buck for your return, right? Would you agree? You don't want to be going there and doing things ineffectively and halving the gains that are on the table for you. So number one is you are not following a program. Now look, this is something that I have made the mistake of myself numerous times. When I am not following a specific program, what ends up happening is I gravitate towards doing the things that I am good at and that I like. So I'm going to ask you a question. Is this what you do? Is this what you do? If you go into the gym and you have a confident mindset around lifting and you say, okay, I'm going to go and do a hard session today, what are you going to do? You're going to do the things that you're good at and that you like, right? It's going to be, particularly for a man, it's going to be, I'm going to do chest and biceps. So you see so many men that have really good development in their chest and their biceps, but they don't do anything else. They skip legs and they skip back exercises. So what ends up happening is it creates imbalances. You also see a lot of women that say, you know what, I don't want to get big up top. Like that's the kind of comment that comes out. That doesn't mean that you completely do no type of upper body exercise, right? You don't want to look like you're made in half. And when you do a program, when you follow a specific set program and you work through that program from bottom to top, this prevents any imbalances or minimizations to your strength gains occurring. Think about it, right? Let's just say that you wanted to get stronger overall as a person so you can be a better dad or a better mum, but you only work on the front of your body or the back of your body or whatever it is for you, the things that you're good at. What ends up happening is your overall strength gains become very limited because you're not overall increasing the strength of the entire building. So mistake number one is just coming in and ad-libbing it. You need to get a program. Number two, and I see this like every single day, none of these are probably more important than others, and that is setting up for the movement incorrectly, okay? What I mean by this is, the first thing you want to do whenever you go into a exercise, be it a machine or a free weight exercise, the first thing you want to do is look at where you are relative to the environment, okay? You want to have some spatial awareness. Now, what I mean by this is, if you sit down to do a bench press, for example, and the bar is skewed, and then you look up to the roof and you're completely out of line with the roof, it's very hard for you to maintain some sort of mental structure because everything's out. I see other people that they'll line up to do a squat, for example, and the amount of bar that is hanging out one side versus the other side where the plate's pushed right up against the rack, it's meaning that you're going into the squat and the bars aren't even on your back. So the moment that you actually start, you're already unbalanced. So the first thing you want to do is when you stand up or sit down on a machine or a free weight area, is you just want to get yourself straight and parallel to either the lines on the floor or the way the machine's set up on the roof. And it can be freaking frustrating when, I don't know about you guys, when you realize how many machines in gyms are just like, the whole arrangement is like, it's out of whack. It does my freaking head in. Get in, set yourself up properly with things like the safety racks, right? Don't rush the process. Okay, number three is not using a suitable weight for a prescribed rep range. Let me say that again. Not using a suitable weight for a prescribed rep range. So let me ask you a question. How do you choose the weights that you lift? How do you choose it? Because I'm going to tell you the right way to choose the weights that you lift. The right way to choose the weights that you lift is not just, oh, what can I lift? It is, what can I lift for the prescribed rep range of my program? So if your program says you've got to do 10 to 12 reps of 3 sets, it doesn't matter what the exercise is, and then you choose a weight in either referring back to your program, your previous data, or you're new to the gym and you're choosing a weight, if you choose a weight that you can only do, say, 4 to 8 repetitions of, this indicates to you that the weight is too heavy. If, however, you choose a weight, and a lot of people make the mistake of going too light as well. I also want to put this out. We always talk about choosing weights that are too heavy. I think other people do it the wrong way around as well. They choose weights that are too light. So the prescribed rep range for them might say, in the program that they've got, 10 to 12 repetitions, but what they end up doing is choosing an exercise, choosing a weight where they can do 15 to 20 repetitions. This is an indication that the weight that you've chosen is too light. So if you want me to answer the question, how do I know what weight to choose or what weight to start? You let the repetitions in the program determine that. Does this make sense, guys? Can you give me a yes in the comments? Because a lot of people just, I can just see it. They're going in, they're kind of chucking the weight around, and they're choosing a weight that's way too heavy for them or way too light for them. Whereas if they just went, okay, do I have a way to actually choose the weight here? And what that way is we go, okay, what is the prescribed rep range that I'm trying to hit? And if you do set 1 and it's way over or way under, you just adjust, especially when you're at the start. This is where you're going to need to make the adjustments. When you're in the gym for the first time, this is where you're going to need to make the adjustments. How are you going to know what you can lift for a new exercise, for example? You don't know. So you have to do a first set or 2, get a feel for the repetitions, and then go, okay, I need to adjust up or down from there. Okay, let's get to mistake number 4. And this is probably the most common mistake for people who are in the intermediate kind of lifting category. And that is using momentum rather than contraction to move a weight. Using momentum rather than contraction to move a weight. Now, I'm going to guarantee you that if you're in this intermediate category, this is you, right? Listen up, this is you. You are now building some confidence, and this is amazing that you're building confidence. But what's happening as you're building confidence and you're starting to increase the weights that you're lifting, you will be starting to swing the weights as opposed to contracting. We build muscle and what women like to call tone, which is, by the way, the same thing. We build this by repeatedly contracting and extending the muscle. This creates local muscle damage, which we then use our nutrition and our recovery to build back up. Now, the struggle is if you are, let's just say, doing a bicep curl and you are swinging the weights up, which is way different to contracting the weights up. There's a big difference here. What ends up happening is the bicep muscle, as an example, or the chest muscle, or whatever you're trying to work, it's not getting contraction. What it's doing is it's using momentum to actually move the weight, which defeats the entire purpose of adding an external weight. For those of you that are not confident in this, what I suggest you do is get really good first at thinking about contracting. As I'm talking to you now, if you're not in the gym or you're sitting at a desk listening or you're driving in the car, just think about this. Can you contract a muscle on cue? Can you right now, for example, think about squeezing your biceps and actually be able to contract that muscle? Can you think about squeezing your chest and actually contracting that muscle? Because that is what you've got to do at the start of the repetition. So if you're doing a bench press, the very first part of the bench press is to contract the chest. If you're doing a squat, the very first thing you do is contract your butt, your quads, and your hamstrings all at once. And this is what propels the movement. So momentum, get rid of it. It's taking the tension off the actual muscle. And when you take the tension off the muscle, nothing happens, which goes nicely into mistake number 6. That is doing repetitions too quickly, okay? Not maximizing tension. There is a concept that a lot of people have heard of in the gym called time under tension. What this means, if I can just talk to you like your muscle is an elastic band, right? What a lot of us are doing is grabbing the elastic band like this, right? And just like kind of quickly pulling it apart and open, right? That is not the most effective way to contract the muscle. What we want to be doing is having that muscle lengthening and contracting over a longer period of time. For any of you that have ever tried what are called negative sets or just really slow tempo sets, you will see that you need to half the weight that you lift if you do the repetitions slow. When you do the repetitions too quickly, what ends up happening is you start using momentum again to propel the movement. You bounce off the bottom and you bounce off the top. That is not contraction. Again, guys, let me know if this is hitting. Let me know if this makes sense. If you want to be successful in changing your body, you've got to learn to contract the muscles and have those muscles under an amount of tension. And yes, if you slow down the repetitions, this will mean that you need to decrease the weights because you are making it harder. You are creating more tension on that so-called elastic band. Yeah? Okay, number 6. This is not taking enough rest between sets. Or for those of you that do this, it's trying to keep your heart rate up. Let me say this once and for all. You are not in the gym to keep your heart rate up. Okay? You should not be jumping around in between sets trying to keep your heart rate up. What you should be doing is stopping and recovering for somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on the exercise that you're doing. The point of this is to let the muscle reset and the cellular energy sources to replenish so that you can come again into the next set and give this 100% effort. Now, that's not to say that there's not a role for jumping around in between sets. This is a different type of training though. You mostly, if you're listening to this podcast, you've got a weight loss goal or a goal to change how your body looks, first and foremost. If you want to do that whole metabolic training and really try to turn your workouts into more of a cardio hybrid or something like that in the future, that's fine. But for the majority of you, what we need to do is just stop in between sets, take an actual break. 30 seconds is probably adequate for something like a bicep curl. 2 minutes is probably adequate for something like a deadlift or a squat, depending on what type of weight that you're using. So the bigger the exercise that you're doing, the more compound, the larger the exercise, the more taxing on the body, the more recovery you actually need. But you are not bludging, so to speak, to take a rest. One of the mistakes you probably can make is taking too much rest, because when you rest, you automatically put out your phone and start scrolling to pass the time. Not ideal. You want to be taking the rest break that you have between sets to recalibrate your mind and get ready for the next set that you're about to execute. Okay, number 7. This is not looking to always increase the weight that we're lifting. Okay, if you're going in the gym every day, if you're still on the same 10 kilo bicep curls that you were lifting 2 years ago, something is going wrong. This for me is the problem with training at home. So many people train at home because either they're parents and they really struggle to get to the gym, but they say to themselves, you know what, I've got a really convenient gym setup at home, it's really, really good. The problem with this is that if your weight supply that you have access to is limited and you just keep doing the same 10 kilo bicep curls because that's what you have, it makes sense, right, that your progress is going to be really, really limited. This is why I think going into a commercial gym is a very good idea if possible. You have endless access to gym. You see people just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's because they're not challenging their body. This concept in the gym is called progressive overload. Break that word down, progressive overload. In other words, overloading the muscle that you're trying to work over time and progressively. Not going from squatting 50 kilos to 100 kilos overnight, slowly increasing it. Do you know if you are tracking with the Better Body Academy app, you are tracking the weights and the repetitions that you're lifting, nothing will progress you further than looking at what you've been doing and finding an opportunity to add 1 or 2 pounds to the bench or the bar every session. How can I add a little bit more weight? That is the way to progress, and this is the reason why most people are not progressing. They're just doing the same weight and expecting something to change. When you lift weights, the response that happens as a consequence of you lifting the weight is an adaptation. Think of it like a microevolution. So what's happening is your hand is like a muscle. If you use a hammer, have you ever seen men or women that are tradies that have used their hands all their life, and they're skinny guys or girls, but they have these massive claws or massive mitts? It's because the muscles of the hand have got bigger and bigger and bigger because of the work being done. And that's exactly how muscles grow over the body. When the work being done is applied over and over and over and over again, and it challenges the body to respond, the muscles grow. If you don't do that, the muscles don't grow. Okay, number 8. And this is not connecting your mind to the actual muscle that you're trying to use. Let me take a micro break here, guys, to remind you that this is the 10 mistakes that I commonly see. Number 8 is not connecting the mind to the muscle that you're trying to use. We touched on this just a moment ago. But you need to get clear before you roll back into position and whatever you're doing, or you get into position in a standing free weight movement. What am I actually trying to lift here? What am I trying to engage? One of the most common mistakes that I see commonly or poorly executed moves is something as simple as a side lateral raise, right? And the reason is because people are chucking the exercises. They're throwing them up. What you need to do is you need to think in your mind, how can I get really good at connecting what's between my ears to the very individual part that I'm trying to lift? In this case, the outer part of the shoulder. Now, let me make a distinction between fat loss and muscle gain. Let me make a clear distinction. If you've been listening to this podcast for long enough, you will know that you cannot spot reduce body fat. No amount of sit-ups is going to get rid of your belly fat. No amount of torso, these things that people do like this, is going to get rid of your love handles. No amount of bench press is going to get rid of the fat that sits on top of the pecs. As an example, no amount of hip thrusts is going to turn your body, your bum fat away. That's not how it works when it comes to fat. You need to reduce the overall body fat percentage. However, you absolutely can target muscle gain. And that's because of the localized contraction that actually happens. You don't lift if you're sitting there doing a machine chest press, you are squeezing the muscles of the chest. That is what's being activated. So whilst you can't target fat loss in the chest, you can target muscle development of the chest if you're a lass. You can't target fat loss in your quads. You can target muscle gain in your quads or composition gain in your quads. And what will happen is the overall reduction in body fat combined with the local increase in muscle will create the change. However, you need to make sure that you've connected the mind to the piece that you're trying to work. Otherwise, the contraction is just not going to happen. So first and foremost, when you're setting up, you need to have almost like a little process that you go through where you sit down, you make sure the safety is assigned, you're square to everything, and then you think, right, what am I trying to work here? Okay, I'm doing a chest press. Let's squeeze this chest and contract. And that's the way that you need to be thinking. You will notice in your next sessions when you apply this knowledge, things will start to turn on and you will get sorer than you've ever been because you've actually worked out how to initiate the contraction of that specific muscle. Okay, number 9 is more broad brush. And this is not being challenged by your workout anymore. Like I said, a lot of people just go in and do the same weights over and over and over and over again. But a lot of people also do the same program over and over and over and over again. Look, let me make a discrepancy, a real insight here. I think it's important that you stick to a program for somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks minimum, right? The reason for this is that if you want to get better at lifting, you need to understand that the thing that you're doing is a skill. The movement that you're doing is a skill. You don't get good at squats overnight. So what I think a lot of people make the mistake of doing is they chop and change their program every time they get, inverted commas, bored, and they end up changing their program every 3 to 4 weeks. And so they're just starting to develop good squat technique, and then they change it, and then they change it, and then they change it. Chopping and changing your program is unnecessary. But what I will say is that if you have been training the same way for 2 years or 3 years, it probably makes sense that your body has adapted to that, right? Your body has got used to that style of training. So what we need to do is change the way that we're operating. We need to change the way that our set and repetition structure is. Maybe we might need to move from doing 10 to 12 repetitions as the primary rep range to bringing it down and doing some really heavy stuff. Or maybe we need to go the opposite way. Maybe you've been doing a lot of isolation-based movements because you haven't been following a program, but you've still been doing that for 2 years. And by changing your program and bringing you an effective schedule, we actually work out, okay, we're going to start with a bunch of compound movements and then slowly move our way to isolation movements towards the end of the program. Okay, so we need to make sure that while we are following a program and we are following that consistently and improving based on the actual repetition of the patterns that we're lifting, we don't want to be doing something for 2 or 3 years, especially if we're not really getting any increase in results. Okay, finally, and number 10 of the mistakes, the 10 mistakes that I see in the gym is not being willing to ask for help or guidance on getting better at performing specific movements. You see, what I think it is that people have a certain ego where they don't want to be seen to be needing to have their technique improved. Now, obviously, I've slipped this one in to encourage you guys in BBA to post your form videos. But what a lot of people will do is they don't want to do that because then if they post it publicly, it makes it look like they don't know what they're doing. I want to shout out one of my best clients yesterday, whose name is Jace Nyes, and I think he's listening to this episode. He was the first one that just basically got into the men's group and said, hey guys, here's my form, can you critique it? And guess what? there was a ton of things that Jace could make to make the video that he did, or the performance of that movement, way more effective. And so guess what? He got immediate feedback. Now Jace knows the next time he goes in and performs that exact movement, he knows the way to do it. So Jace is now going to benefit from that. If we don't have any idea what type of process you're going through when you're lifting, or what your actual form looks like when you're lifting, you could just be doing a lot of things wrong, which with a simple change to your technique, guess what? You get the feedback that you need to go, oh, okay, I see that. Oh my God, I'll give you another example here. I was training with Coach Carly's husband, Shane, okay? This guy is the same age as me. He's been training all of his life. Just seeing his technique on a lateral raise, what I got him to do is just change the position of his shoulder slightly, get his elbow coming up above his wrist, dropping back the weight, thinking about the mind-muscle connection. He had to huff the weight that he was lifting, but then he was like, fuck, I've never done that before. It feels so much better, and I'm actually feeling it where I'm meant to be feeling it. If you're hiding from that type of feedback, then you're limiting the amount that you can progress. So guys, I'm going to quick fire hit these 10, then we're going to finish the podcast and I'll answer any questions that you guys have got. So please ask some questions. Number 1 of the 10 mistakes that ruin your progress in the gym is not following a program. You need to have a program. Number 2 is not setting up for the lift to be safe and stable at the start. Take some time at the start. Number 3 is not using the repetition range that's prescribed in your program to determine what weight you are lifting. You should be choosing a weight where you can't do any more once you get to that target rep range. Number 4 is using momentum rather than contraction to lift the actual weight. Goes into number 5, which is doing repetitions just way too quickly. Number 6 is not taking enough rest and trying to keep your heart rate up. You're not trying to keep your heart rate up. You're trying to keep your heart rate down, if anything. Number 7, not looking to always find an opportunity to increase the weights. Number 8, not connecting your mind to the actual muscle that you're trying to squeeze through that movement. Number 9 is not being challenged anymore by your workouts. You've been doing the same thing for 2 or 3 years and nothing's changing. You need to change your workouts. And number 10 is not being willing to actually ask for help. Guys, I hope this has been helpful. And remember, when you're going in the gym and you're listening to a podcast like this, and then you go back into the gym, if you don't have any sort of notation or you haven't taken a mental note on the thing that you need to work on next time, don't just listen to this podcast and just go through the motions again. This is why you should take advantage of April being form month so that you can take some videos, you can show us what you're doing, and we can correct the form. Leave your ego at the door and let your coaches help. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast, and we will see you in the next episode. Okay, team, we are going to leave our friends on Instagram. I hope you have a beautiful morning, guys. Take care, and thanks for tuning in. Okay, guys on Facebook, do you have any questions? So I'm going to highlight the question here from Sean. I have a question. You normally find one side stronger than the other. Should you lift to your stronger side and try to get the weaker side to catch up, or work with the weaker side first? This is very common, Sean, and very normal, okay? The short answer is you should accommodate to the weaker side. Okay, so if your program says 10 repetitions, right, you should do 10 repetitions on a weight that the weaker side can handle, okay? Where the weaker side fails. Something we didn't talk about in this podcast was what level of effort should it take before you put the weight down? Okay, this is a really good question. When we talk about the amount of intensity, you want to have it so that when you get to the target rep range, for example, 10 to 12 reps, You could maybe do another repetition, but that's it. This is the key. The key to lifting is you need to be what's called failing inside the target rep range. So if you're getting to 10 to 12 reps and you could still do another 3 or 4 reps, then you're not failing in the target rep range. You need to increase the weight. If you have the situation where you have, which is most common, is, and I have the same thing for the record, it's you have to accommodate to the weaker side, because what you don't want to do is keep the stronger side getting stronger and the weaker side lagging. I will say that a great way to do this, Sean, is to start doing exercises where we separate one arm or one leg and you have to do them independently. Yeah? So as an example, let's just talk about our shoulders, for example. If we're doing a dumbbell press and we're using free weight, clearly each hand has to be independent of the other. So if you're weaker in one side, you're not going to do a 20 kilo bicep on one side, 20 kilo dumbbell on one side and 14 kilos on the other, right? You're going to choose the same weight. So what you want to do is choose the same weight, but make sure that the weaker side is accommodating. And if that means that the stronger side is lagging a little bit, that's not a problem. We want to be trying to make up those deficits, absolutely. And one of the programs that I'm developing at the moment for us inside of Better Body Academy is exactly that. It's a program where we try to correct these imbalances by doing movements which isolate each side. In fact, Carly is doing the program, Coach Carly is doing the program right now, and the feedback that she's giving to me is like, it's so fucking hard because most of the things we do, like a squat or even like a deadlift, our dominant side can do a lot of the work. So when you split them out and you actually have to use your weaker side, it's almost like going and using your left hand again, right? It's really hard. You can learn, if you're right-handed, you can learn to do it, but it's bloody challenging. Okay, guys, do you have any more questions about lifting? So happy to stick around and answer any questions. That was a great question, by the way, Sean. What else would you like to know right now about lifting? Maybe a mistake that you sense that you could be making, perhaps? All good, brother, no problems at all. Maybe a mistake that you sense that you could be making? Happy to answer any and all questions, team. Okay, let's keep the questions coming through. If you've got them, guys, use the opportunity. All right, how about the number of working sets? Is it okay to increase weight each set? Okay, that's a good question. By the way, I'm sweating like a mule in here. It's so freaking hot. How about number of working sets? Is it okay to increase the weight each set? So the way that you should think about this is you have a number of working sets that is prescribed in your program. So if your program says 3 sets of 10 repetitions of any set exercise, this means 3 working sets. 3 sets where you're putting in. This does not mean 2 sets of warming up to the main 1 set. So there's a difference between warm-up sets and working sets. And most coaches, like myself, would probably not list warm-up sets in the program. What this means is that you need to do your own warm-up set. So I'm just going to go to this question down here to partly answer it. What about warm-up, Jace? If you want the best warm-up, I'm going to tell you that this is what it is, right? It's 3 parts. And then we're going to come back to answer that question. 3 parts. Number 1, a very short, low intensity bit of cardio machinery, okay? Treadmill, rower, bike, stepper, it doesn't matter. What we want to be doing is just warming up our body a little bit, just getting the blood flowing. I'm talking about 5 minutes, like that's it. We're then going to go and do some dynamic stretching. We talked about this recently at the women's retreat. I could do a whole different podcast on this. Maybe we can get Coach Troy to actually put together some sort of a program that might help. But we don't want to be doing static stretching. We want to be doing stretching which is made around dynamic movements that are helping us to go through our range of motion. We're going to do that for 2 to 3 minutes. And I actually keep doing dynamic stretching right throughout my workouts. I'm always like, if I'm doing a bench press, I'm moving my arms across. I'm trying to stay limber and move my shoulders, get into, right? I want that rotation. I want that full getting right through the range of motion of that joint, okay? Number 3 in a warm-up is warming up to your set with weights that are less than the target weight that you're going to lift with. So I'll just break this down and give you an example. If I'm doing a 100 kilogram squat, and I'll choose 100 because that's an easy number, the first thing that I would do, so I've done my little bit of cardio, I'm going to go in and I'm actually just going to put the bar on my back and I'm going to sit in the squat position, right? I'm going to get ass to grass and just sit in the squat position. I just move around a little bit like this with the bar on my back in the proper deepest squat position. What I'm trying to do here is work on my ankle mobility, right? I want to get the knees to actually feel like they've been through the squat a few times. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to do some body weight squats with the bar on the back. Then what I'm going to do is add 1 plate. So it's going to be 1 plate either side. And I'm going to do 8 to 10 repetitions of 1 plate. This is half my working weight, but I'm working my way up to it to make sure that I don't injure myself. And so then I'm going to do maybe 70 kilos. I'm going to do 5 or 6 reps. And then I'm going to do my working set. So the first 3 sets at body weight, at 50 kilograms and at 70 kilograms, these are called warm-up sets. They do not count. You do not write them into your tracking. What you then do is you go into your working set and you go bang. That's when you actually count your lift. So the program always talks about working sets. Now, so hopefully that answers the question about warm-up. Now, when we talk about the number of working sets, is it okay to increase the weight each set? Yes, if that's what your program says to do. Now, that's a different type of rep structure than what is called straight sets. Straight sets are when you have 3 times 10 or 3 times 6 or 3 times 12. This is when the program says to do the same number of repetitions. If, however, you have a different style of program done up where it says, for example, do 12 repetitions first, do first set, do 8 repetitions next set, do 6 repetitions next set, do 4 repetitions the final set. That is a different type of rep structure that is targeting you to increase the weight as you get into more sets. That's a different type of structure. And if that's put into your program, then it's okay. What I don't think is a great idea necessarily is increasing the weight each set unless it's because you're realizing that, hey, I've got more in me. If that is what you're doing, then absolutely. So as an example, yesterday, I was in the gym, I was feeling just really strong. And the weight that I normally lifted, I got in, I could see that I had more reps in the tank at the failure rep range. So then I put on another plate, like a 5 kilo plate on either side. And I did that set and I was like, look, I've still got more. I had 4 sets to do and I realized that with each set, I still had more. So in that note, if you're trying to increase the reps because you're hitting the failure rep range and you've still got more in the tank, then absolutely, that's what I mean. You need to keep increasing the weight. But if you're kind of like wasting your first 1 or 2 sets because you're still in warm-up, when that's actually meant to be a working set, then that's not a good idea. So if your program says do 3 or 4 sets, that's 3 or 4 sets where you're going hard. That's not 2 sets where you're kind of warming up a little bit and then 2 sets where you're actually working to the target rep range. Guys, put more questions in the comments if you got them. I'm still 15 people watching on live, so I'm guessing there might be a few questions here. Okay, on a 7-day, should you be going to failure? On a 7-day, should you be going to failure? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Can you clarify what you mean by that? On a 7-day, should you be going to failure? Yeah, I'm just not sure I understand the question. The long story short is, if I can answer the question in what I think you might be asking, you should be going to failure as, versus a 9 or an 8. Yeah, so you should be, on a 7-day, right. So you mean an intensity 7-day. Yep, got it. You really want to be going to failure in, this is a hard thing to articulate. What is true failure? True failure is where you're in the squat rack and you cannot get another repetition up, which would mean that you're stuck at the bottom, right? That's not something that you can do over and over and over and over and over again every week. It's just a challenge, right? So what you want to be doing is you want to be getting to the point where you don't want to be going through the motions. If you're doing a 12 repetition day, if your program says 12 reps, you can fail at 12 reps at a certain weight in the same way that you can fail at 4 reps at a certain weight. It just comes down to the actual weight that you're lifting, choosing an adequate weight. So Scotty, in your circumstance, if the intensity that's listed in the program, and it's a kind of a difficult concept to explain, but if the intensity says we want you to do a 7 out of 10, we can back the intensity a little bit by choosing a lesser weight, but you still want to be taking it deep into, you don't want to have 3 to 4 repetitions left in the tank, because those 3 to 4 repetitions are the ones that actually create a lot of the localized muscle damage, and that's where the adaptation is needed. So I personally, in my own workout life, I don't really do any sets or exercises where I'd consider them a working weight. This is not a warm-up set, it's a working weight. But I'm happy to just go, that's good. I could have done another 5, but I'll leave it there. To me, that's just a waste of time. I don't think there's any benefit to doing that. We're kind of just again, let's go back to what weightlifting is meant to be doing. It's meant to be triggering an adaptation from the body. So if you're not getting that adaptation, think of it almost like, this sounds like a weird example, but evolution, right, of a species. Evolution of a species happens over the course of years, and it happens because this species needs to develop a tail or fucking needs a 3rd leg. That happens because this species keeps facing the challenge in its environment, and so it has to adapt over time. Otherwise, us humans would have been walking around on all 4s. So what ended up happening is we evolved over time. When you're in the gym, that might sound like a silly way to explain it, but when you're in the gym, it's like evolution. Your body is going through evolution, but over a very condensed period of time, right? Over time, if your body is changing, that is because it is evolving to the environment that's being applied to it. The only difference being the environment you're manufacturing, Scotty. You're applying that to yourself through the work that you're doing. Evolution, I guess, happens naturally. Adaptation happens when you externally impart those challenges to your body. How does someone get better at running? Someone gets better at running because of the external challenges they're putting upon their body to do more. That's why, so let's talk about cardiovascular fitness. Why does someone get better at running over time? Well, without talking about the mechanics of running and muscles and all that sort of stuff, their cardiovascular system improves. It gets better at exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood and the lungs. That's how it gets better. The heart gets better because it's becoming more effective at a pump. The blood vessels get better because they're becoming more elastic. The lungs get better at their exchange surface. So that's what's happening. So whenever we do exercise of any kind, we are attempting to create an adaptation by the body. So if you are ineffective at the stress that you're putting your body under, that's why going into the gym and swinging the weights just doesn't work, because the body is going, well, this is too easy. I don't need to create an adaptation here. That's a very, very good question, Scotty, by the way. Anything else, guys, that you would like me to answer before I close out this little Q&A at the end of the podcast? Still 16 people watching on live. Look at, I'm working up a bloody sweat here. Okay, team. Well, if that's it for this morning, this afternoon, and this evening, peace out. I hope you've had a beautiful, beautiful day so far, and we'll catch you in the next episode. If you got value out of the episode, would love you to share it. Cheers.